If you're a fan of Sali Hughes' beauty column in The Guardian, or you've ever read her blog, Sali Hughes Beauty, you'll definitely have seen her brilliant In the Bathroom With interviews, where she takes a snoop through people's bathroom cabinets and through their private lives. At the pool, we decided it was about time somebody turned the tables on Sali, so here we are in her bathroom. Hi Sali.
Hello, welcome.
It's a pretty fabulous bathroom, pretty big.
Thank you very much, it's my favourite room. So.
You spend a lot of time in here.
I do. I'm the only person in the house who bathes. Everybody else showers. And I do shower, but I like a bath and I like a regular bath.
And are you a bubbles or oil person?
I'm a bubbles person.
Oh, me too. All the best people are bubbles people.
I like bubbles. The thing about the oil is I'm too lazy to clean the bath after I've used the oil. But I do like posh bubbles because I feel like my motto is cheap shower, expensive bath. So I kind of put treaty things in the bath and then use Dove or Palmolive in the shower or whatever.
So what's your bubbles of choice?
Well, I think we're going to look at them in a bit, but I really like Laura Mercier bubbles, and I love Cowshed, and I like Clarins and Elemis and things like that. So I'm quite treaty when it comes to bath, but really kind of low cost supermarket things in the shower.
So beauty's played a big part in your life, hasn't it, from an early age? Mm-hmm. Was it, were the women in your life, as when you were a child, big on beauty?
Yes, not, the women in my life, in my family, were all interested in beauty and concerned with how they looked, and I got that from them, but none of us were really high maintenance. It's not like any of us spent hours getting ready or setting our hair or anything like that. It was just a normal part of life. We always, my grandmother and my mother would never have gone out without paying some attention to how they looked, but it wasn't like this kind of religion that I know some people have. It was just like anything, like reading books, watching TV. It was just like a normal part of our lives.
Have you got like a formative beauty memory? Because for me, my grandma had a, what do you call them? A little wooden pot on her dressing table. It was like a powder pot.
Yeah.
And that's like the one thing I can always remember.
Yeah. My earliest memory of anything relating to beauty was I was sitting on my grandmother's bed. I used to spend loads and loads of time with my grandparents and I used to stay with them a lot. And I was sitting on my grandmother's bed and she was looking in the mirror on her dressing table and she was putting on her face powder from a Stratton compact, there's kind of gilt compacts, and putting on some Boots No. 7 Fuchsia Lipstick. I'm not rich, I'm not from a moneyed family at all, so we didn't have kind of luxury things. And we were about to go into town on the bus and she was putting on a lipstick and I remember watching her like totally hypnotised and said, why do you put makeup on your face? And she said, when I'm wearing my makeup, I'm always ready to go on an adventure, is what she said to me. So I'll never forget that. And she said, what about if we go into town now and we meet somebody and they invite us to a lovely party and we don't feel our best and we won't want to go? So we're always ready to go on the adventure. Of course, it never happened. We never were invited to the amazing party. We just went and bought meat and bread and what have you and came home. But that definitely stuck with me. And yeah, that's my earliest memory.
And is that your ethos? Always be ready to go on an adventure?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I go out without makeup tons. I have to say, I'm not my grandmother.
Oh, thank God.
No, tons and tons. So if I'm going out for a paper, I'm literally just going out for a paper. I don't give a damn. I'm definitely not somebody who can't be seen without their makeup. I really don't care. It's fine. But putting it on does kind of make me feel a bit more ready to have fun. Like I like the getting ready. I like if I'm going out for dinner with girlfriends or whatever, I really enjoy the ritual of getting ready. It kind of puts a spring in my step, makes me feel nice. I love it when I turn up and all my friends are dressed up. I love that. It kind of adds to my sense of fun for the evening. But I can totally go without. For me, that's what makeup is. It's kind of like, who do I want to be today? Sometimes you can't be asked and you want to sit in a onesie and eat a bacon sandwich and that's fine. And sometimes you kind of want to feel a bit more glamorous or you need a bit of backbone because you've got a big presentation coming up or whatever. You get to choose who you want to be and that's why I think it's so powerful.
I think that's one of the things I think I took a really long time to understand that about clothes and makeup. And certainly when I first started going to the shows, and I used to think, why is everybody spending all that money on ludicrous clothes they're never going to wear again after they've been to Milan? And then you, after you've done it a couple of times, you think, oh my God, I really need that armour. I really need that.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you questioned it though, because I do think that it's important that we always question this stuff. You know, do we need this stuff? And some of it is born from insecurity, and I think that's something I'm always checking in myself. It's like, do I really want this because it'll make me happy, or do I want this because I don't feel good enough without it? And they are important questions, but I think at this point my relationship with fashion and beauty is quite bedded in. I know what it does for me, and it genuinely gives me joy, I think.
Oh yeah, it was definitely, in that case, it was definitely insecurity. Definitely, it was like, I'm not good enough, so if I
don't miss the shows
if I
at all.
hide behind all this expensive clobber, which, you know.
I mean, I can't speak for you, but when I used to go to the shows every single season, it was just, I just felt fat.
Yeah.
I just felt fat, and I felt like I didn't have the right stuff, and I felt like people were judging me, and it's just not a nice feeling. So you buying the handbag or buying the shoes is just you trying to buy your way out of that horrible feeling, isn't it? But that's not something I generally feel in life. I'm not somebody who feels desperately insecure in other environments. So my relationship with the whole thing is quite healthy, I think.
Yeah, totally about it being fun and just making yourself feel a bit better.
And creative. Nobody ever talks about beauty as being creative, and I think it's hugely creative. And I genuinely feel sorry for men for not having it, genuinely, because they just always look the bloody same. Nobody wants to look the same every day, and men always look the same. What are they going to do? Grow a beard, maybe have a slightly different haircut. Whereas if you're a woman, you have so much at your fingertips, and you can kind of express your mood and your identity in more imaginative ways.
Is that why because you moved to London when you were really young, didn't you? 15, 16?
And it was about 2 weeks before my 15th birthday, so technically I was 14, but I was basically 15.
Scary. Did you run away?
Yeah. So I ran away. I woke up one morning and I got my brother David to lend me £20. He gave me a £20 note, and I walked in my school uniform up to the train station and bought a ticket to London, a child ticket to London, which was £12.50. So I had £7.50 left. So I arrived in London with £7.50.
And had you taken anything from any of your stuff?
I had my
what would fit in your school bag?
I had my school bag, but I also had my school gym bag, my kit bag, and I'd put clothes in there, you know, knickers and bras and some t-shirts and jumpers or whatever. As much as I could carry, but not very much at all. And I remember getting on the train, getting off at Paddington, and James from EMF, can you remember EMF? Unbelievable.
Yeah, sadly.
He was in Paddington, and I was in my school uniform, and I thought, God, this is so exciting. Here I am in London, and James from EMF.
I've already seen a pop star.
Yeah, I've already seen a pop star, but I'm so lame, I'm still in my school uniform. So, and I never went back.
Did you know where you were going?
I did know where I was going. My boyfriend at the time, I so don't recommend this, by the way. I'm not suggesting that this is in any way.
Parental alert here.
I'd have a heart attack if this was my children. Also, it was kind of a different time in terms of opportunities and so on. I had a boyfriend who was an adult, really not good. He lived with a girl who was just his flatmate, Julia, and they lived in a flat in Paddington, so it was literally a 2-minute walk from the station. So I got to the station, I went there. They didn't know I was running away. They just thought I'd come to stay. So I got there, and about 2 or 3 days later, I told them I had actually left home. They weren't that pleased. No, they weren't impressed.
Did they try and get you to go back, or?
Not really. I think they understood that I was very unhappy at home, and I think they understood that there was probably no stopping me. No, they didn't try and make me go back, but they were worried. Julia in particular was worried about my education, and was worried that I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted to do, which was to be a journalist. That was all I wanted to do. I had no interest in doing anything else, and had felt that way since I was 4 or 5. And I think she was worried that I wouldn't get to where I wanted to go.
Without exams.
But at the same time, she was hugely supportive because she was a press officer at a major record label. So she knew all the editors in London, especially on teen mags where pop music was really important. So she got me loads of work experience and stuff on magazines like Smash Hits and Just 17 and Big. There was a magazine called Big.
I remember Big.
And Looks. Yeah. And those sorts of magazines. So
back when there used to be loads of teenage magazines.
Yeah, there were tons, and they were, and that's, I should say that actually, teen magazines were everything to me. They were everything to me.
It's so she got me. I wanted to be a journalist because of Smash Hits.
I wanted to be a journalist because of Just 17.
Yeah.
And weirdly, when I was a little girl, and I would count the days until Just 17 came through the letterbox, there was a member of staff on Just 17 who was only 16 years old, and her name was Steph Stevens. And I used to read about, because there were always loads of staff interviews in Just 17, always loads. And I was obsessed with this girl. She was only 16 and she worked on Just 17 on the fashion team. She was Fashion and Beauty Junior, I think. And I thought she was so great. And weirdly, years later, we ended up working together for a long time on Elle Girl. And she did all the styling for my book. She did she did all the styling for Pretty Honest, and she's a very dear friend of mine.
And you're still friends with Julia as well, aren't you?
Really, Julia is one of my very best friends in the world. The book is dedicated to her and my friend Carrie, and still a hugely important figure in my life, and I owe her a great deal. I mean, she put me up in London. Anything could have happened to me.
Yeah, and you went straight to her, and
yeah.
So you didn't, what I was going to ask you is, because beauty was so important to you, and you worked as an assistant to a makeup artist, didn't you? Was one of your first jobs?
So what happened was, I got here, I didn't get here, not Brighton, I got to London, and I had no money, and also, although I could do bits and pieces of work experience, I couldn't immediately because I was too young to be insured. So magazines couldn't give me work experience.
Yeah, of course, same now,
I think you had to be 16 or something.
Yeah, I think it's 18 now.
So I did babysitting for people here and there. I did a couple of days work in a shop that somebody we knew's wife owned or what have you. And I was just desperate for cash. And then one night I was in a club called Fred's in Soho that I used to go to quite a lot. I'm 15 at this point. And I was a real nerd about fashion and beauty, and as we discussed, always had been. And I was introduced in Fred's to quite a famous makeup artist at the time called Lynn Easton, and I knew who she was straight away. And I got talking to her and I said, I love your work, I loved this shoot that you did, I loved that shoot that you did, because I had this kind of encyclopedic knowledge of magazines and so on. Oh, you know that shoot you did on the beach? No. Oh, well, I do, and I knew everything about her work. And she said, you seem to know a lot about beauty. Do you want to be my assistant? My assistant really gets on my nerves. She said, my assistant really annoys me. I'm looking for an assistant. Do you want to be my assistant? So I said, yes, I absolutely do. So that was that. And then she rang me 2 days later, I think, and said, we've got a Pet Shop Boys video. And that was my first job.
And did you meet her, did she know Julia as that? Was
there
a music industry connection?
I was very much in a big gang of London creatives, I suppose. It was a really different time then. It's very hard to explain to someone now, and I feel really sad for young people now.
When was it? Early 90s?
So this would have been 1990. It's so different now. In those days, even if you had no money, if you were creative and you were into books and you were into film and you were into music and you had a fiver to go and have a beer somewhere interesting and cool, you would get into conversations and opportunities would come your way. They just did. And you kind of collected people, whereas London doesn't have many normal people in it anymore, or poor people, or you
can't afford
they're kind of shoved out, aren't they, to the outskirts. But in those days you could live in central London with not very much money, and you could meet really great people who kind of gave you opportunities and pushed you forward. And that's what happened to me. And Lynn Easton, the makeup artist who was known as Pearl, was kind of everyone's friend. Everyone knew her, everybody used to hang out in the same places. So she knew that I was kind of, you know, spoken for, that I was an all right person, and she took me on, and we worked together for a couple of years until I was old enough to get work experience on magazines.
And then you went back into this journalism was where your love was.
Yeah, so couldn't wait to become a journalist, managed to become a journalist, was never out of work. My boyfriend, not the boyfriend, my next boyfriend, who is a very, very lovely man and didn't go out with a child, he was a photographer, is a photographer. He took all the photos for the book as well. It was very much a family affair. He heard that there was work experience going on Loaded magazine. And at this point I was working at the Gap and doing work experience wherever I could. I was managing the Gap on Regent Street. And he said, so I was kind of 20 or something, 21. So
practically geriatric by this point.
Yeah. So he said, oh, they need a work experience person on Loaded. So Loaded was a very different magazine in those days. So I went for my job interview at Loaded, and there was no one there, and I got there and there was only the editor's PA there, and she said, oh, they all went to an award ceremony last night and they all got really pissed and nobody's turned up for work. She said, you can go and reschedule or you can wait. And I said, well, I'll wait for a bit. So I went round to the fashion cupboard and waited for the fashion editor to turn up, and he didn't turn up. So I was just kind of sitting there twiddling my thumbs, and the fashion cupboard was wide open and there was just like a pile of clothes there. And I'd already done a fair bit of work experience at this point and kind of knew how it all worked. So I just thought, well, I'm just sat on my arse. I'll just reorganise the fashion cupboard. So I went into the fashion cupboard and got all the clothes together and put them into agencies and bagged them up and did dockets and just did it all. So then they came in about 3 hours late for the interview, and I'd completely reorganised the fashion cupboard. So they said, okay,
right, stay then, yeah.
Yeah, so they gave me the work experience gig, and 2 days after that they offered me a permanent job, and I got my own section soon after that, and then I was up and running, and I was never really out of work after that. I was really, really lucky. Again, different time, but I've never been short of things to write, so I'm really lucky.
Yeah, because I didn't, when you first started writing for me on Red, I didn't even know that you'd done beauty. I thought you were a straight features journalist.
Well, I hadn't really. I'd only done Loaded grooming, and I'm really, really glad that I got my foot into writing that way. But no, I was a straight features writer and interviewer for a decade. And then I had my children, and I suppose when you get a bit older, lots of editors start asking you to write first person more and more opinions. So I'd started to do that, and I hadn't been writing as many features. That I was mainly writing first person. So it had kind of gradually progressed, and I didn't start writing beauty again until The Guardian.
So tell me about how that came about.
So I got the Guardian column because I slagged off the existing Guardian column.
I was to say,
I said that the existing Guardian, I didn't want
back
that
when
column.
Twitter was nice.
Yeah, I wasn't after that column. I cannot stress to you how little interest I had in writing about beauty. Like, it hadn't occurred to me. But I still loved beauty and was still obsessed with it, and I love good journalism, so I found that page disappointing. So I tweeted that the page was not very good, just as a punter, as a reader.
Yeah.
And Caitlin Moran replied to me and said, oh my God, that page is so terrible. And then Kirsty Allsop said the same thing. And there was a bit of a flurry, like lots of women who were kind of prominent on Twitter were saying, yes, it's so bad, it's so bad. So the editor of Weekend at the time, Merrippy Mills, saw it happen, saw it unfold on Twitter.
Yeah, and was sitting there thinking, oh my God.
Yeah. So and then of course readers were tweeting us and saying, yeah, you know, what the fuck, I don't know what that is. So she contacted me and she said, I saw your tweet. At this point, I'd been writing for The Guardian for some time. I would write for Family, or I would write Comment or whatever. But I'd never worked for her because she was on the Weekend magazine, and she said, do you think you can do better? And I was like, yeah, I definitely could.
Oh, yeah.
Funnily enough, I was sitting in Red at the time. You were on holiday. I was covering, you were on holiday. And she rang me, or maybe your deputy was on holiday and I was covering her. But anyway, I was sitting at Red and she rang me and she said, do you think you can do better? And I said, yeah, I totally do. And she said, come in and speak to me. So I went in and spoke to her, and she said, what's wrong with it? And I said, if you want me to be really, really honest.
Yeah, how long have you got?
Yeah, I said, if you don't care, if you know nothing about beauty, this page tells you nothing. And if you do know about beauty, this page is taking the piss out of you. So either way, it's not serving anyone, and I think it could serve everybody. So she said, okay, go away and write 6 columns and make a video, and we'll see how we get on. At the time, what I didn't know, which I found out subsequently, is she was also speaking to another journalist about writing a kind of parody beauty column, which, and it was really neck and neck which way it was going to go, whether it was going to go to this other journalist who was going to write a piss take column, a snarky kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or
which would have
to me.
really run its course, wouldn't it? Because that joke is only funny a few times.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't really like parody advice columns. I think either want to help people or don't want to help people, and I feel the same about beauty. Either respect it or don't do it. It's fine not to do it, but you know. So it was between me and this other journalist. I didn't know this until later, but anyway, she called me and she offered me the job, and I took it, and that was in 2010.
So did you set out to write that kind of no BS style of beauty that's really become your trademark in all your writing?
I did, because that's how I write anyway, and because I wasn't from a beauty background. I just think there are so many really, really brilliant beauty writers who are not allowed to write as themselves. I think there is a real thing in glossy magazines where there are really good beauty writers who just write that kind of beauty writing that has been decreed from way back when I actually think they're really talented, and I think it must be really frustrating for them. But because I wasn't from that background, I just automatically wrote the way I had always written features and columns, and was allowed to, because I wasn't a proper beauty writer. So it's kind of by accident, in that I didn't know how to do it another way, and I was allowed to because I had a different background. But I do think it's changing. I think if I've had any influence whatsoever, I'm told that now editors are saying to their beauty editors, can you have a bit more personality in your copy, which is great for them because they already had it, they just weren't allowed to write that way. So yeah, it was always going to be like that. And I also felt that, you know, lots of women felt alienated by that kind of flowery, scientific as well, beauty language. I felt like that stuff was written more for advertisers than it was for readers.
I think it was, yeah.
And I just didn't feel that was very useful, so... And also on a national newspaper, you don't have that advertising thing, so you know you're not having to please advertisers. So I was able to just do what I wanted. Also, nobody on the Guardian really understood beauty. That was the other thing. So on a women's magazine, it'll be full of people who basically know what they're talking about when it comes to beauty. But I think at the Guardian they were blinded by science and didn't interfere because they didn't really know
so
what
just
it
took
was.
Your word for it.
Yeah, they just took my word for it. So that worked to my advantage as well.
So were you surprised by how massively popular it was and how quickly?
Yeah, hugely. I was totally shocked. I first realised I think it was on the second week I'd done something about smoky eyes, and I got a call the next day from the brand, or 2 days later from the brand, to say that nationwide the stock had sold out. And that kept happening. Brands would say, well, we've got no stock left because you recommended it. And I had no idea that would happen. None at all.
I think it's about trust. I mean, we had someone email us last week and say, you recommended this product, the Clinique product, and I know that you work with Clinique, so can you tell me that you really like this product and you haven't recommended it because you have to? And so, you know, we wrote back saying, no, we would never do that. You know, that's not the business that we're in. So we're in the business of, you know, trust. And that,
it's changed so
really
much, though. It's changed so much because I think readers are so sophisticated now and really savvy. And they can smell bullshit, or at least they know that bullshit happens all the time throughout the industry. It's also much more complicated to navigate now, in that it used to be glossy magazines pandered to advertisers, then blogs came along and blogs were really, really honest. Well,
not anymore.
Neither of those things are true anymore, because actually there are great blogs and there are really dodgy, dishonest blogs, and there are great journalists and really crappy journalists. And it's much more now, I think, about trusting the voice, not the medium. And So people will trust certain bloggers because they trust that person, not because they any longer think, oh, blogs are really honest, because you can't assume that at all anymore.
No, definitely not. Are you, you've talked a lot about how once you started writing your beauty column, people stopped letting you write other stuff. Stopped
It was horrible.
You to do that.
It was horrible.
Which is just insane.
I haven't talked about this much, but when I first got that column, I think I spent the first 2 years of that column really regretting taking it, really regretted it, and told my loved ones that I'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. And I loved the column, and that was going great, and it was really popular, but it was too popular because all the editors, or most of the editors, who had always commissioned me, stopped commissioning me for things that I normally write. And they would suddenly only commission me to talk about makeup or how I looked or whatever. And it was really upsetting, but actually it was really upsetting, but also really indicative of the wider view of women. The idea that if you like lipstick or if you like dresses or shoes or whatever, that you can't possibly know about anything else or be engaged with anything else. It's this assumption that women can only really trouble their pretty little heads with one thing at one time. So whereas I would get commissioned to write comment pieces on current affairs, suddenly those things just went away because I was now the lipstick girl and therefore not credible. And I remember commenters below the line saying, I would write the odd thing that wasn't to do with beauty. In The Guardian, they would say below the line, oh, you should go back to what you should go back to what you know.
Love.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because you want to say, well, yeah, but there was almost 15 years before this that I just wrote about other things. It's really infuriating. So, I mean, there were some editors. You never stopped commissioning me for the normal stuff, for my actual job stuff. Red were always really good about that, and Grazia still commissioned me. But yeah, newspapers definitely. Newspapers. Yeah. I do think everybody really slags off women's magazines, but my experience, I mean, it's really cool to slag off women's magazines, but my experience of women's magazines has always been really, really supportive of me as a female writer. Like really, I had you at Red and I had Vicky Harper at Grazia, and the work never stopped coming in, and I was always just seen as a writer who would deliver my copy, and it would be clean and it would be fine. I wasn't kind of put in a box. So there was nothing I could do about the perception except try and change it myself. I couldn't get people to take me seriously, so I just had to say,
yeah, I'm just going to show you.
Yeah.
So I remember when you wrote, and you've been doing your column for The Pool about 4 months, and you wrote the housing benefit column.
Yeah.
That went completely insane.
Yeah.
And there were people all over social media going, oh, she wrote about politics.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Go figure.
It's so weird because, I mean, it's just life. I mean, of course. I don't know, I find it very weird that anybody would assume that a woman should be defined by a hobby. Nobody does that to men. Nobody says...
Look at Robert Peston, you know, enormous Arsenal supporter.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly all right for blokes to know about football and economics.
Yeah, I hate it, but I do think it's changing, and I think I've sort of played a part in that. I had to address the Oxford Union a few months ago, and I was so scared, and I had to argue this very point. I was so scared. And actually,
who were you arguing against?
There was some academics, there was a consultant plastic surgeon, there were presidents of charities, intellectuals of various kinds, all men and me. And I had to go and address the Oxford Union. I was so scared, so scared. But actually, at the end, people came up to me and they were like, oh yeah, I've never thought about it that way. And it's really strange to me that people need to be told that you can be interested in fashion and beauty and also other things. I find that so weird. It's literally never crossed my mind. But then I did have a mother who was very politically engaged, very engaged with feminism, always looked great, loved shoes, loved lipstick, passionate about big, weighty issues. So it never crossed my mind that you had to pick a team.
So it's completely normal.
it never, ever, ever crossed my mind that I had to pick a team. My mum would go to Greenham Common for the weekend and sleep in a tent in Greenham Common with like great hair and lips on, and it never felt like that wasn't complimentary to me. It didn't occur to me.
You're a really big believer, aren't you, in the power of beauty products and makeup to, to do so much more than just, give you a smoky eye or whatever. I think there's one of your quotes about the only thing worse than feeling crap is looking crap too. And I think if it's okay to talk about Carrie a bit, your friend from Camera Obscura who died at the end of last year. I mean, she had her lipstick lined up in hospital, didn't she?
She took, so when Carrie was first diagnosed with osteosarcoma, which would have been back in 2011, she went in for her chemo and she couldn't be an outpatient. It was a really brutal round of chemo. She was basically in hospital for a year, and she took in 9 lipsticks with her, and she got ready every single day, because for her, and I think for lots of women, it's about trying, when everything is chaos and everything is unrecognisable, it's about trying to maintain some sense of normality and some sense of self. It's trying to keep something steady when everything else is crazy, and I completely understood that. And it was Carrie who made me write Pretty Honest, unwittingly, but she had a huge tumour in her leg, and in 2011 she went in for the surgery, and the consultant said to her, we're going to have to amputate the leg. The tumour is too big, we're going to have to amputate the leg, and when you come out of anaesthetic you'll probably still feel the leg, that's normal, we'll work through that in physio, but we're not going to be able to save the leg. So she went into surgery, and when she woke up, she could feel the leg and she didn't look. And the consultant came round and said, have you looked? We saved your leg. And they had saved her leg, and she told me all this. I spoke to her after the operation and said, what happened? And she told me this, and I said, what on earth do you do when you are told you're going to lose a leg and you wake up and you still have a leg? I can't imagine what that's like. What do you do? And she said, I painted my toenails. And I just completely understood. I think most women understand that sentiment. Like, my leg, I own it. I am going to control the situation. I am going to make it look pretty. I'm going to look down at my toes, see them still there, and they're going to be red or whatever they were. And it made me think, and I had been writing a feature for Stylist about the power of beauty treatments in people with cancer and people with depression in particular. And I'd been researching that, and I thought, and then that happened to Carrie, and I thought, this is a thing, actually, it's about time somebody wrote a beauty book that's about real life, that's not about taking molasses and porridge and making a face mask, or it's not about some glorious makeup artist coffee table book, which I love, but is pretty useless if you don't know what you're doing. Nobody has ever actually written a book about life, about what happens if something terrible happens. What do you wear to court? What do you wear to a funeral? And all those things came together, and that's why I decided to write the book. And I'm glad that Carrie was fit and well when it came out. She got to come to the launch party, and she was really thrilled. It was dedicated to her, and I'm really glad I managed to complete the project before her cancer came back and killed her. But when she was really, really ill towards the end, those things were just as important. She didn't give up, Every time we visited her, we gave her a facial. And there was one time I visited her in hospital really near the end, and she texted me and she said, can you bring some decent stuff to put on my nails and do my nails? I was like, it's fine, I've already got it, it's fine.
Yes.
And she always had perfect nails right until the end. She always cleansed her skin, or got me or Tracy Ann or somebody who loved her to clean her skin, or her mum before she went to sleep at night in hospital. And for her, that was important. It was important to maintain dignity and self-respect. Now, I'm not saying that has to be important to people. I'm not saying that you lose dignity and lose self-respect. But if that's who you are normally, then I completely understand why you need to maintain it for yourself, because you need to feel like yourself, and that's what it was for her.
Totally. I mean, in Pretty Honest, you address all kinds of moments in life that change the way you feel, the way you think, your skin. So like the chapter on motherhood was really popular, wasn't it? Was that come from your own experience?
Yeah, I was mental when I had a baby. Like I properly was depressed. I was so unhappy after I had my first child. My father died as soon as I became a mum, so I became a parent and lost a parent within 10 weeks, I think. I was quite mad.
It's like your dad.
Yeah, so my dad died, and I was just quite mad. And there was one day that Julia, the aforementioned Julia, came round, and I was wearing this kind of weird pastel jumper with some sequins on it, like the most unme thing
ever. I was say very you.
Yeah,
where the hell did that come from?
Thing ever, and kind of quite demure makeup, and you know, quite what I thought was a mumsy hairstyle. Of course, it's really patronising of me actually in hindsight, but I was nuts. So I was kind of dressed as a mum, and Julia came round, and afterwards she texted me and she said, "I'm coming back round tomorrow, and I'm taking the baby for a walk because you're wearing a very strange jumper. You're wearing pastels. Something is really wrong. I never wear pastels." So yeah, I was quite mad, and I do think that when you're a new mum, everything is so weird and so unrecognisable, and you can feel so at sea that if the thing that makes you feel like you is the lipstick or the decent hair, then I think you should do it. I think.
Are there any products you've come across that you thought, actually, that's been worth it? That's going to make me not look younger, but better, firmer? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, for sure. For sure. There are definite products that that I think make a noticeable difference and that restore. I have to say, I'm not that bothered about wrinkles personally, but I do miss glow. I like glow. So I'm not, I like perky. That's the bit I miss about having very young skin, more than no wrinkles. I'm not really asked about those, but I do like to restore glow. So I like products that give that back. So I do tend to use lots of acids and stuff to restore that. Bioeffect, really, really expensive serum, but you only use it in a short burst. You use it until the bottle runs out. You just use it every now and then. That really, really works.
What's really, really expensive?
That costs a fortune. It's like £100.
Oh my God.
On the whole, though, I'm not really a journalist who very often tells you to get something that's over £100. I don't, just because I think if you stay, I always say to people, if you don't have much money, spend your money with people who have tons of it. So if you don't have squillions and squillions of pounds, actually the research and development at Olay, Nivea, Clinique, Estee Lauder, Clarins, they have so much money to do research. You're better off spending your money with them than with a tiny niche brand that's charging 150 quid for a serum that actually has a smaller capability in terms of research. So I actually think that kind of department store and even some supermarket can often be more dependable and reliable than the super, super, super expensive things. Which isn't to say I don't like certain expensive things. I love Sunday Riley, for example. Super expensive.
That's super expensive, yeah.
But in my kind of product stash, you will see loads and loads of more recognisable names, more of that than kind of little culty niche things. Because also I just think that journalists can lose perspective a lot because we don't pay for anything. I don't pay for anything. Everything I get is free, and I think you have to, and that's really important to my job. I couldn't do my job if things weren't free. You can only get a balanced beauty coverage if things are free. So that's fine, except I do think you need to keep a handle on what other people have to do to pay that kind of money and how hard they have to work. And if a moisturiser costs the same as an evening's babysitter, then I think you have to think about where the priorities lie for people. So you can't get too jaded. So I think twice before I recommend something super expensive. Unless I think it's amazing, I probably look for something a bit cheaper.
What are your kind of like base products? What are the products that you use every day, couldn't live without? always go everywhere with?
Cleanser. I think that the one thing that you will do for your skin that's more noticeable than anything else is cleanse it properly. If you cleanse your face properly with a cleanser and a flannel, like an oil or a balm cleanser and hot flannel, I guarantee your skin will look better within a week. I guarantee. And you can't say that about many products. Serum, I always use a serum with hyaluronic acid. That's like a definite every morning. My skin's really dehydrated and it just plumps it up. I tend to use Vichy Aqualia Thermal, which is not very expensive. It's about £17. I use that every day. Sometimes I'm testing others and I have to come away from it, but I tend to always go back. Foundations and corrector, Bobbi Brown corrector I always use, and on the whole I think wipes are a bad thing. I think if you're at festivals, if you're in hospital or if you're on a flight, fine, but if you're at home, I think they're immoral. I think they're so wasteful. They just end up on landfill. They cause so much pollution. I really hate them ethically, but also they just don't clean your skin properly. I don't believe in them. I think they're awful. It's a bit like kind of never having a shower or something. I just think it's a bit gross. And cellulite creams I would never use. I would never use a cellulite cream. I would never use a bust gel. I would never use anything that claimed to affect fat in any way. And I don't ever use things that claim to restructure your skin.
What was your best find of the last year?
I think I've written about this loads in the past few months. There's a Givenchy foundation called Le Temps Couture Balm that I absolutely love. That's just like a daytime foundation. And then there's a new foundation by Guerlain called Peru Gold. And it's the best foundation I've used in 10 years, but it's a completely different one to the Givenchy. It's like a full coverage going out party foundation, not a daytime kind of soft thing like the Givenchy. Both of those are amazing. Really, really, really impressed with those.
Is foundation your Desert Island product?
No. So my Desert Island product, assuming that I've already got sunblock.
No, cheating.
Oh, well then sunblock. Sunblock, because I don't want to get skin cancer. Well, I would choose sunblock, but if I was allowed another thing, I would probably choose, if I was trapped on a desert island, I would probably choose a red lipstick to cheer myself up. It would just make me happy. And yeah, I wouldn't really care about how I looked. It would just, the idea of having a bold colour on this sort of desert island landscape would cheer me up.
Brilliant. Right, now we're going to go and look at the stash.
Yes, do.
Great.
Bumble and Bumble Full Potential shampoo and conditioner. I use that pretty much every time, although I'm testing these at the moment. They're new ones from Chevectin. I'm just testing them.
If you buy shampoo and conditioner, what would you buy?
If I was buying, and I like L'Oreal LV Fibrology a lot. It's so cheap and it's really, really good. It would be horrible on your hair, I have to say.
Yeah, no.
But it's good for my hair, which is flat and fine.
So what do you think? Because like you're saying, you do treaty bubble bath.
Yeah.
What do you go bargain basement on?
Shower gel, body lotion, pencils you don't need to spend much on, mascara you don't need to spend much on. You can kind of cut, I think quite often nail varnish you don't really need to go mad on. You can cut even like bath, although I like treaty bath, it doesn't have to be mega expensive, like that's not bad, I don't think. And this is a Kneipp one, and this is the only bath oil I don't find too greasy. It's the almond one, and I think that's about 7 or 8 quid or something. And then, so in here, there are hundreds of flannels. There's about 100 under there in bags that I haven't even opened yet. But then
do you use flannels or do you use those linen cloths?
No, I use flannels. So I use bog standard white flannels. I get them from IKEA. They're like about £1.20 for 10 or something. And I get a fresh one out every day. And then at night when I take my makeup off, it goes in the wash and then I get another one out each morning. I've always got millions of those. These are brilliant. I must tell you about these. This is Good Things. And they are £3 in Superdrug. And they're really, really good. Nothing nasty in them. Nice bubbles. coconut oil, and just really, really nice. So I've got a few of those. I've been using those a lot.
If it says bath soak, is that going to give you bubbles? Because that's the thing I never quite know when I'm buying bubble bath, whether I'm going to get bubbles.
So this gives you bubbles because coconut oil is a natural foaming agent. They're not like huge Radox bubbles, but they are bubbles. If you like bubbles, you will like. But no, the soak thing, it just sounds nice, doesn't it? I don't think there's rhyme or reason to it. This cowshed one, I love cowshed.
So cream, that's not...
Cream usually foams.
That normally foams, right.
Cream normally foams. All the Laura Mercier ones, these are my favourite. They all foam big time. That's my favourite one, almond coconut. The Clarins ones foam a lot as well. I really like those. They're just kind of classics. This Elemis one does not foam at all, but it's lovely. There are some things here that I've been using for years, like Renutriv. Estee Lauder Renutriv is a real favourite of mine. I've used that for donkey's years. Chanel hydrating serum. I love that. Oh, this is a really good tip. This is Compeed Cracked Heel Balm. If you've got really, really, really hurty, chapped winter hands, put loads of Compeed on your hands. Get some cotton socks, put them over your hands and go to bed. This is Lavera all-round cream. It's really cheap. It's a German brand. You just get it in chemists in Germany. And you get it, I think, in Holland and Barrett here. It's a couple of quid. It's just a really nice multi-purpose moisturiser with nothing nasty in it. I have Take the Day Off cleansing oil. I really love, lots and lots of people swear by Take the Day Off balm. I love balms, but I don't like this particular balm as much as I like the oil. The oil is amazing. It shifts everything. If I'm doing a shoot and I've got tons and tons and tons of makeup on, one go with that and the towel is totally clean. Loads of spare deodorants and stuff. I never use posh deodorants. I think the cheap ones are better. Not many toners. You will see I don't really do toner.
Do you ever use toner?
I use exfoliating toner. I'd use a liquid exfoliant, but I'm not one for like a flowery water after cleansing. I just can't see the point. These are really brilliant.
It's a wipe.
It's not a wipe. It's not a wipe. It is a mask. So you pull it out and it's a paper mask that's drenched in serum, and you put it over your face for 20 minutes till it dries, and then you take it off and it's all been absorbed. It's so nice. Oh, La Roche-Posay. I think if you're going to be buying retinols and things like that, if you're going to be buying anti-aging stuff and you don't have loads of money, I would always go French Pharmacy. I would always go Vichy, La Roche-Posay, Rock, those sorts of brands, because that's kind of less than 20 quid and really, really good.